In this video with Ryan Vett.
The nerves were so intense that you could visibly see that microphone bouncing back and forth. As a speaker, you are one human being imparting knowledge to another human being. That dream wasn't just about speaking, it was about the power of connection, inspiring change.
The Ryan Vett Archives. Here's a complimentary lesson from Ryan's premium masterclasses.
Welcome and thanks for tuning into this course. I'm Ryan Vett, and I'm excited to talk about the power of speaking. You know, the power of the podium is something special. And I will never forget, in the second grade, my teacher stood in front of the room and instructed us to draw ourselves in the future. And while the poorly sketched figure barely resembled a human, I did add one very important detail on my paper. I drew myself wearing a lavalier mic as a part of my future career. Now, who knows if I thought I was going to be a theater performer or a pastor, a politician, or a CEO. All I know is that I was infatuated with the idea of standing behind a podium and being entrusted with a microphone to amplify my message. But let me invite you into a secret. I was so shy. I had terrible stage fright. In fact, in the fourth grade, my moment came for me to clip that lavalier mic to my denim blue button-up school uniform. I kid you not, the nerves were so intense that you could visibly see that microphone bouncing back and forth with every beat of my heart. Having the privilege of sharing a message is quite powerful. And over the next few minutes together, we're going to do a crash course. And when I say crash course, we're going to go fast, covering a wide range of topics from crafting your message to technical setup for virtual presentations and everything in between. And by no means will this be a deep dive, but instead, my goal is to expose you to a variety of key factors involved in creating a powerful presentation. First, let's talk about a framework of a powerful presentation. Albert Einstein once said, "It is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge." Speakers awaken joy. They inspire creative expression, and they impart knowledge. Einstein's quote is a profound framework for creating a powerful presentation. As you prepare your talk, think about these three things. First, how can you awaken joy in the hearts of your listeners? Joy is simply a sense of pleasure or happiness arising from people hearing your talk. I always say that I want my audience to feel better having listened to me than before. For the time I get with an audience, I want to bring them into a conversation that makes them forget about everything else in their life that's going on, and in a brief time we have together, my goal is to leave them better than they were before sitting down in that chair or logging onto Zoom. It does not mean that every person is radically transformed and that their life does a complete 180 every single time I talk. What it does mean, though, is that I hope that I can just say one thing that gets people's wheels turning, that one thing that makes someone really think deeply, or that one thing that someone can change when they leave my room. And most of all, I want people to leave not having been bored out of their minds the entire time. Boredom is a joy killer for sure. Now, saying all that, I've had the privilege to present to over 500 live audiences and tens of thousands of people in person, as well as millions via television and radio appearances. I can confidently say that I fulfilled this mission the majority of the time. But it wasn't always that way. It took a lot of practice, a lot of work, and a great deal of outside coaching pouring into me. But my goal at some level is to awaken joy every time I have the opportunity to get in front of others. The two ways I can tangibly do this include doing everything I can to keep people fully engaged when they're in my audience and making sure that the audience gets true value for the time that they invested with me. First, keeping people engaged can be challenging, especially when doing a virtual event like this. Even for those of you listening to me today, I'm sure you have me in one window, and all around right now you have alerts popping up in the corner of your screen, and maybe you're even texting. Virtual has made presenting challenging, but it is possible to keep people engaged. The second element is making sure that people get at least one thing of value for their time. This can be a big idea you build your whole presentation around and you really drive home, or it can be tangible takeaways that can be immediately applied as soon as your audience leaves the doors or signs off the webinar that will affect a positive change in their lives. That second profound statement by Einstein, and the quote, is to inspire creative expression. Quite simply, our goal as speakers is to get people to think and move them towards a particular action. You see, you can talk at people or you can talk with people. What do I mean by that? When presenting, you can just run through your material. It's like lobbing incessant snowballs of knowledge at your audience. But when you talk to or with your audience, you are engaging with them on a deep and personal level. Instead of chucking knowledge from the stage onto an audience hoping it lands somewhere it's supposed to, you have the opportunity to invite your audience into your presentation and start to make them think. This is inspiring creative expression. Creative expression can be inspired in a number of ways. You can ask provocative questions or bring up challenging ideas. When I give my presentation on situational ethics called Let's Get Ethical, there are quite a few challenging scenarios that make my audience think. That ethics course, along with my course on generational dynamics, cracking the millennial code, and from Z to Alpha, really get people's wheels turning and really rock the boat on their current way of thinking. To evoke this creative expression, you can bring your audience in and ask them to imagine or dream with you. You can tell them powerful stories that land and resonate in a very helpful way. Inspiring creative expression allows an individual to take what you're teaching them and internalize it to make their lives better. The final profound descriptor of the supreme art of an educator, as Einstein puts it, is to impart knowledge. You want your audience to feel enriched. You want them to learn. You could teach them a new framework for thinking. You could teach them a new skill. You can teach them the nitty-gritty ins and outs of a software program, or you can even be teaching a clinical or procedural lesson. Regardless, it is your duty from stage to be able to impart knowledge. These three elements provide a high-level view of the power of the podium to awaken joy, to inspire creative expression, and to impart knowledge. Now let's go a bit deeper and unpack some of the specific things you can do to craft a powerful presentation. First, let's talk about overcoming imposter syndrome. See, America is plagued by glossophobia. This is a serious condition that impacts just shy of 6 billion people. That means 3 out of every 4 of you listening today likely suffer from a varying level of glossophobia. So what is it? Well, phobia is a suffix affixed to many of our words today that stem from the Greek word phobos, meaning fear. Glosso, or in Greek glossa, means tongue. So quite literally, this means the fear of the tongue. Or more appropriately translated, we call this the fear of public speaking or stage fright. So often I see people afraid to present because they feel like an imposter. In the world of speaking, we call this the imposter syndrome. A line of questioning starts running through your head and it goes something like this. Why am I speaking on this topic? What if I say something wrong? What if people in my audience don't like me? While we could do a whole course on overcoming these concerns, let me just say this. You have a privilege to speak. In fact, every day you speak 7,000 to 20,000 words in your normal interactions, from ordering your latte at Starbucks to telling your dog not to tear up your carpet and everything in between. Here's the deal. We don't have any trouble speaking daily in our daily lives, and speaking publicly is not that different. You know, if you go to your Starbucks barista and order a green tea frappuccino, no classic or base sweetener, soy to the second line, 1 scoop of vanilla bean, 1 pump of skinny mocha, 4 very heaping scoops of matcha, heaping grande scoop of ice, blended on level 3 times, you're getting judged by your barista. And by the way, that is an actual order that was reported by a barista once. Your dog, when you yelled at them to stop tearing up the carpet, is also probably not your biggest fan in the moment. Who cares? You will still go back to Starbucks and order the same drink shamelessly day after day, and you may even bring your own thermometer to make sure it's exactly 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And you know your dog will curl up next to you and snuggle with you at the end of the day, even after you scold them. As a speaker, you are one human being imparting knowledge to another human being. View that as an honor. You're not an imposter. You have a unique set of skills and experiences that no one else in your audience has. Use that as your fuel to inspire them. Let's move on to crafting a powerful presentation. As I stated when we first set out on this journey together a few minutes ago, we are just doing quick touches on some big topics that in and of themselves could be full-blown half-day workshops. This one is no different. So we will briefly touch on how to create a powerful presentation. Whenever I'm about to speak, I always start with this exercise. At the top of any presentation I put together, I write the phrase, at the end of my talk, I want my audience to. I'll say that again. At the end of my talk, I want my audience to. Usually I will end this with a think, do, know, or act statement. Again, that is a think, do, know, or act statement. For this conversation we are having right now together, my statement reads, at the end of my talk, I want my audience to walk away with a high-level understanding of how to create powerful presentations while feeling empowered to present with confidence. So start at the top of your page and write, at the end of this talk, I want my audience to. And now you have a blank canvas, but a clear purpose. There are quite a few methods you can use to write your presentation. I'll give you a high level here. First, you can use the sticky note method. Now, the sticky note method goes something like this. You go ahead and you get all of your ideas onto different sticky notes. You write them down and you put them around a room or on a table. You can use note cards to do this. And so I have my idea, my thoughts, my supporting details, and I begin to rearrange them into what ultimately becomes a presentation. That's one way you can do it. Another one is the slide deck method. For you, maybe you already have some idea of the flow of your presentation and you're ready to go build your slides. So you open up PowerPoint or Keynote and you begin putting information on slides in order. Now you can rearrange those ideas very much like the sticky note method and put them in different places to create your presentation. The third option is the transcript method. A lot of professional speakers actually don't recommend this. However, this is the method I use most. I will actually write most of my presentation verbatim, the exact words that I'm going to use, and then I'll start to learn and memorize that script. If you enjoy writing and that's easier for you, you can actually write your presentation out word for word or pretty close to word for word and use the transcript method. The fourth method, and probably the most popular method, is the outline method. In the outline method, you are literally doing different bullet points and you have your big idea and then a supporting point and then maybe 3 additional supporting points. The outline method is extremely powerful and helpful and allows you to create the framework for your presentation. These 4 methods, of course, are not the only 4 ways that you can create a presentation, but they are 4 powerful ways to craft your story. Now, once you have your main framework for what you're presenting, it's important to add storytelling. You see, storytelling enhances the understanding of your audience. It's like explaining it to a toddler or a 5-year-old. I've had the opportunity to teach a group of kindergartners through 5th graders for more than 10 years, week after week after week. And you can tell them and teach them, but until you make it tangible about cleaning their room or eating candy or something that relates to them, it doesn't really stick. So start thinking of ways that you can tell a story. Not only does storytelling make it connect, it increases engagement. Now people can start to picture themselves within your story. It also improves retention. Not too long ago, I was sitting at a conference and I had spoken to a similar audience several years before. I was sitting at a bar and they came up to me and they said, "You're the guy that tells a story about the App Trail and your brother hiking it." And I said, "Yeah, I am." This was literally years earlier I had told this story. And they began to recount almost verbatim every single main point of that story. For these 2 individuals at the bar, that story clearly improved the retention of my entire talk, and even years later, they could retell the story. The next point of storytelling that is so important is it builds an emotional connection. We've all been in an audience where there's a hilarious speaker or a speaker that really makes that guttural connection where you get emotional and almost sad. When you do that with your audience, you're bringing them on a journey. Now, I do want to encourage you with one thing. As you build this emotional connection, you have the ability to bring your audience up and down. We often in the speaking world encourage you not to leave someone high too long or leave them in the valley before you bring them back up. And so you want this nice flow throughout your presentation. You want to land somewhere on the emotional middle. At the end, you really want them to feel inspired. You don't want them to feel depressed or sad, or you don't want to have them on such an emotional high that they're wired and they forget the rest of your story because they're focused on the last thing you told them. So use your entire narrative to craft this perfect story. And finally, telling stories encourages interaction. People get to put themselves in the shoes of your storytelling. Maybe they can relate personally, or maybe they're able to see something in a different perspective for the first time. Now let's talk a little bit about slide design. The first rule of slide design is so important, and you've heard it over and over and over again, but I'm gonna say it now. Never read from your slides. Your slides are not designed to be a script. Okay? Slides are meant to help and support you and be second seat to you as the speaker. Too often I see speakers go ahead and fill their slides up with as many words as they can, and you'll literally see them turn around and read from their slides and turn back to their audience. Unfortunately, I've even been in presentations where their backs to the audience almost the entire time because they're reading. Do not use a slide for that. What slides are meant for, they're meant to be a visual aid that break up the monotony. We're talking, and I've been talking for quite some time now, and if you're just staring at me the entire time, it's hard to keep an audience engaged. So they can be used as a visual aid to break the monotony. Now, if you do want to put content or information on slides, keep them clear and concise. If you've seen me present in person, and I do have slides, which is not all the time, but if you do see me use slides, I often just use pictures. They're visual cues that take someone's eyes off me for a moment, inspire them with a picture, and then they can regain their focus or refocus back on me. Clear and concise slides are very important. And if I do have words, you'll notice that there are very few words and sometimes just big words right in the middle of the slide. This makes your point stick and your message doesn't get lost. The last thing you want to do is have a slide that distracts from you, where someone's reading the slide and they have no idea what you're saying. And one last thought, always cite your sources. Images are copyrighted. Studies are copyrighted. You need to make sure that every time you cite a study, you have an image, or you do anything else on a slide or in your presentation for that matter, you cite your sources. Now, you don't need a full works cited and footnotes on every single slide, but at the end of every single one of my presentations, I have a works cited slide and I make that available to all of my audiences. I also include a lot of research in most of my presentations. I make sure that that research is readily available for anyone in the audience in case they have questions or want to verify what I'm saying. Qualifying for CE does not mean that your content has to be boring though. People want something that sticks. The worst thing that you can do is build a presentation chock full of information that is just technical, and nothing sticks. You've been at a presentation, I'm sure, where you've sat for 2 or 3 hours and listened to someone speak, and at the end you walked away and you're not sure what you learned or what you heard. Even though the content was extremely valuable and had a lot of great information that you should probably apply, you glazed over because it was boring and too technical. So one of the things that you can do, even in a CE course, to help offset some of the boring monotony that can happen is add storytelling to drive home those important points and give practical application to what you're teaching. All right. So we live in a day and age where virtual presentations have become very common. And when presenting virtually, it can be extremely challenging to engage effectively with an audience. Now, I'm a certified virtual presenter, and what that means is I've gone through courses and a certification program that show that I can present effectively virtually. But there are a lot of things that are important. So first, I want to talk about the technical aspects before we get into engaging people. But the technical aspects are quite simple. You need to have a good video, good lighting, and good sound. Now, I'm going to give you a little tour of where I am presenting today. So what I have here is good lighting, and you can see this lighting all throughout. And this lighting ensures that I am well lit. One of the things I see so many people do so often is they go ahead and they will backlight themselves or be in front of a window and they become this silhouette. But when you have adequate front lighting, like a ring light or other lighting around, it's going to help make sure that you, the subject, are in focus. The other thing you're going to notice is I've got a microphone up here, and I actually have a microphone that's hidden on me. And so I'm always having good audio. This is, again, is extremely important when you're presenting. All too often, I see speakers have a very cluttered background with awards and everything else. Now that's okay, but if you look at this background now, it's fairly balanced on either side, and right behind me is pretty clear. There's nothing too distracting behind me, and you can really focus on me as the speaker. Having an effective background is extremely important, and so often I see speakers or presenters virtually have a background that's completely cluttered with awards and books, and while those can be used to help prove your point, sometimes it's important to just have a simple balanced background. As you'll see, I have a background that makes sense. We even have a microphone hidden in the set here to show that this is all about speaking. It's balanced on one side or the other, but immediately behind me, there's nothing distracting. Nothing's growing out of my head. It doesn't look like there's a clock hand coming out of the top of my head. So think about that when you present. Now let's go back to what it means to be a certified virtual presenter. I've spent a lot of time getting certified and creating a powerful and compelling virtual presentation. Hopefully some of what you're seeing today is evidence of that. But here are some things that you also need to be aware of beyond the lighting, audio, and video that are extremely important. While audio, video, and lighting are all important, it's important to place yourself in the correct spot. We talked about making sure that your background wasn't too noisy, but it's also important to show enough of you. So often you get this talking head and the frame zooms in and it's too tight. You want to make sure that you can show how you're being dynamic. Often when presenting virtually, it's important to stand as well, like I'm doing. Now you can sit in a chair, but you want to make sure that you are fully engaged. Having multiple camera angles is great if you have the ability and setup to do that. If not, have one camera angle and make sure that it's well lit, focused on you, in focus, and it's with a high definition camera. Let me just touch on one more thing when it comes to presenting virtually. Consider a contingency plan. When you're getting your certified virtual presenter badge, one of the things that they make you do is shut down your Zoom and pretend that everything breaks, all your power goes out, and you have no lights. What are you going to do? You have to be prepared just in case something ridiculous happens while you're presenting. So I always make sure I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, but nearby, so that if Zoom goes out or anything else goes out, I can immediately dial in, or even in worst case scenario, do my whole presentation via my phone. All right, so in the few moments that we've had together today, we've touched on everything from the framework for speaking to making sure that your speaking has good storytelling in it, how you're going to write your presentation, a little bit on slide design, a little bit on technical presentations. As we wrap up on this crash course, I want to leave you with a final thought. Remember me, that second grader with a simple sketch dreaming of a future behind the podium? That dream wasn't just about speaking, it was about the power of connection, of sharing ideas, of inspiring change. Whether you've taken the stage many times or your heart is beating nervously with the idea of even presenting, I want to invite you to embrace the podium, not just as a platform for speaking, but as a special opportunity to provide and inspire positive change to those that you get to share with. Whether you're addressing a crowd of thousands, a small team meeting at a morning huddle, remember, you're not just sharing words. You have the opportunity to awaken joy, inspire creative expression, and impart knowledge. While this was a quick overview, we have many resources to help you write your presentations and become a successful and well-polished speaker. Always feel free to reach out if I can ever be helpful in equipping you to build a powerful presentation.
You have just experienced a priceless insight from the Ryan Vet Archives. Subscribe to Ryan Vet and like this video for more insights.